Everybody hide their children. Let's see. We are live. I'm going to make sure that my YouTube is, yep, muted. Let's mute that. All right, we got Trevor Beast in the house. Hold on a second. I'm gonna. All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Hangout here at the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. Let's see who's joined us tonight because we got a couple things that we're going to talk about. And hey, there's everybody. How's it going? Hold on a second. Let's see. Can I do this? Yes, sir. Mr. Trevor Beast, how you doing?
Oh, man.
I'm doing really good. I'm glad to be here on this Friday night talking Star Wars.
Excellent. Yeah, so, I
give
just
full
finished.
credit for that made pet.
For the got me in there. Let's see. There is. I'm gonna as soon as more people join in, because I think Brad is going to be joining us as well. But I just want to make sure that everybody's got their masks ready to go. I don't want any of your germs on me. So here we go, guys. There you go. Awesome. So I hope everybody is doing great out in the world. It's a new world. Now that the Empire has taken over, the Empire of viruses. But I'd like to welcome everybody to our Friday night chat. We got quite a full house here. Let's go around the room and see who we have. Mr. Red 4 himself, DJ Charlie Skywalker. How's it going, Charlie?
Things are looking up.
Excellent. I love when things are looking up because that means that, I don't know what that means, but it's just really good stuff. Who keeps popping off? Let's see. And who else we got there? Black Squadron Podcast, BP. I'm sorry. How you doing, man?
Oh, just still trying to recover from today's episode of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I just finished it, and it's a real good one there. I know people are sneaking in here. There's a lot of people in the green room. We'll get to everybody. Rob, how's it going over in your neck of the woods?
Going outstanding. Ready to talk about this episode. Totally envious of that sharp hat that BP's got on there. So,
yeah,
That's awesome.
We saw that picture earlier in the week, and that was, yeah, I'm going to have to get my hands on one of those. And Mr. Trevor Beast 454, Mr. Quizmaster himself. Trevor, how's it going?
It is going great, Ro. And, I'm pumped to talk about this Clone Wars episode as well. Shattered a lot of my expectations.
There you go. Yes.
Yep.
And on the other side of the Scare of Scuttlebutt console, he's still, I think K2SO has not been able to fix his camera yet, especially when we're here on StreamYard. But Mr. Brad, how's it going, Brad?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sweet.
Loud and
Yeah,
clear.
man, I'm glad to be here, man. It's awesome to be hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, so Clone Wars. What's that all about? You guys, man. I just finished that episode. Been watching it, steadily as it comes out on Friday nights, and it just keeps getting better and better.
So good.
What do you guys think? Hold on, let me check the stream here because we got some more people joining us, and I might have to step out and do a little of relegating from behind the scenes. But Rob, Trevor, BP, Charlie, Brad, go ahead and let's start it up. Since the last episode, we're noticing that this storyline is really taking a life of its own, even apart from the Clone Wars. Obviously, we're getting some crossover from Revenge of the Sith, and things are starting to ramp up and really tie in, especially tonight's episode. you really saw kind of an alternative, angle, if you were. Uh, Rob, what did you think of last week's episode leading into this episode? I mean, it's cinematic, it's movie quality.
Yeah, I'd say, this entire arc of the Siege of Mandalore has been excellent. It's clear that this is where they put most of their time and effort for this season. And I love that they've gotten back to the issue that I had with some of the earlier arcs is that they kind of regressed Ahsoka's character, I thought. I do think that Martez Sisters arc did bring out some stuff that's pertinent for this particular arc as well. But she's back, kind of in her full glory in this Siege of Mandalore arc. And it's just it's cool to see that even when all hell breaks loose in this episode this week, she is still looking to save her friend Rex any way that she possibly can. And I think that it's again, it goes back to what you talked about on the Jedi Temple Archives podcast in our episode this week. We know how this ends. We know what's going to happen ultimately. It's just the details of how it falls out that is what makes it so interesting. And the way that they've kind of intertwined it with some of the events of Revenge of the Sith has been very cool as well.
That's the thing. I was talking to some buddies of mine, and they're kind of, dogging on me that we know what happens. But, a lot of times it's about the journey. It's about, what happens from point A to point Z. That's where all the excitement is. What did you guys think of, I guess, just the quality of these last few episodes? They really, like Rob, like you said, they really have been putting a lot of thought and I guess money, but the production value from the very beginning of this arc and tonight's episode, where you hear that music, that low tone right at the beginning. I mean, it really sets up the seriousness of it. Black Squadron, what were your thoughts initially?
I can tell you, I cannot wait until we have all 4 of these episodes to be able to then just watch them consecutively. What will that be? That would be 2 hours, right? So that's going to be essentially a movie that I can't wait for. The thing that stuck out the most to me so far, and this entire season really, is just how lucky we are for Sam Witwer. He has just blown me away this entire season, particularly the last couple of episodes. Just like I believe it so much because of him.
Definitely. I think, Alex was saying online that if you follow Ray Parks also on Instagram, you can tell that for the last couple of months, he's really been training for something. And, now we find out what he was been training for through the work that he's done through the mocap, work that was put into last week's episode. Charlie, what were your thoughts on this going in? I mean, every episode ends with a nice little cliffhanger, and my son, I just watched it with my son, and that last shot, and when the credits rolled, you saw the executive producer George Lucas, and he's like, "No!" I mean, this just keeps getting better and better, man. What do you think?
It was absolutely amazing. Going back with something that you said just a little bit ago, the perspective is really what fills in these episodes. You get to see things that you're familiar with, but with a new slant on it, just a different angle, and it really flushes it out. It tells more of a complete story. You don't have to have, all of it in order to get the story, but it really just, instead of going with 8 colors, you now have 16 to work with. And it's absolutely incredible.
I think you've got 64 to work with, because this is the big box, Charlie. This is the big crayon box.
Oh yeah. It's I watched all 3 of them in a row. I watched the first 2 that came out, and then watched the third one immediately after, and I was just sucked in. I thankfully got to watch the third one before they called my name to go into the little office from earlier, and I was just waiting. I was like, man, if they happen to call my name to go in, I don't want to pause it. I'm just going to have to let somebody else go ahead and go in front. I was that engrossed into it. So yeah, they absolutely amazing.
Yes, definitely. Trevor, we talked about some episodes in the past of the Clone Wars series. Yeah, I know, we were on a show together, but this is really blowing everything we've seen out of the water. I mean, the story so far has reached a peak that we talked about it. We know what happens, but damn, this is really exciting nonetheless. What'd you think of it?
I also agree with the rest of you. I thought it was incredible, but before this season 7, the Lawless was my favorite episode of the Clone Wars with Darth Sidious fighting Savage and Maul, and now it might be Phantom Apprentice, it might be Shattered as taking my top spot of the Clone Wars, but this was epic in pretty much every single proportion, like just how it tied in with Revenge of the Sith, how we hear, Ahsoka like sensing that that huge conflict between Mace Windu, Anakin, and Darth Sidious and stuff, and like I said earlier, it did shatter my expectation. The fact that I thought for sure that Order 66 would be initiated whenever Ahsoka's on Mandalore and not on this Star Cruiser, like heading to Coruscant.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I have some more points, but you can go ahead.
No, I thought they were going to do Order 66 in the last episode and then just like leave it, kind of in the mystery, because obviously we can kind of go to the movies and find out what happens, but they went there when they had a shot of Sidious, telling Rex it's time. I was like, oh my god, and we still have one more episode, so I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Brad, we talked a little bit about Order 66 in the Jedi Temple Archives show. We get to see another, I guess another perspective in tonight's episode. What'd you think of the episode, man?
Yeah, man, a few things. Number one, I knew Rob we were on the right track with that podcast on the Jedi Temples podcast. I didn't realize how on point that conversation was going to be, and how pertinent to this episode that was going to be. So for anybody who has not checked out that episode yet, you got to check out that episode. It's a great tie-in to this episode of Clone Wars. A couple things, and I'm not even exaggerating. I think I had goosebumps at least 95% of that episode, if not the whole damn thing. And the other thing for me, which is very telling, is how interactive I was with the television during this episode. I'm not normally one to speak out loud during watching a movie or a television show. I think I was literally yelling at the TV half the time, from Rex, like, Rex, what the fuck are you doing? Come on, Rex, come on, Rex. And between that and then Maul's oh shit Vader Rogue One moment there in the hall. Mm-hmm. Yeah. San's lightsaber didn't even need one. The entire ship was his weapon. I mean, I of course I just got goosebumps just saying that. I mean, like, I have never, and I was, and like you guys are saying, we know what's going to happen. We know that Maul lives. We know that Ahsoka lives. But while you're watching that thing, you're taken to another place. You're watching. You don't know whether they're going to live or not while you're watching this, and that is some amazing storytelling. I mean, and then to see that other angle, that's one of my favorite conversations in Revenge of the Sith, where they're talking about taking control of the Senate, and of course they're playing right into Sidious's hands when they're having this conversation. Even Yoda recognizes it, says we're going to a dark place, and then to see that from another angle, and then for Mace to do typical Mace. Hey, no, this is a council conversation. You're not part of it. Man, I won't say what expletives I used on that one. Like, I still can't stand Mace. I don't care what he was in a comic book on. I can't stand Mace.
Phoenix Night Flame said it in the chat. Mace Windu is such an a-hole in this episode. That's exactly what I said to my son when he turned around and goes, "No, I can't tell you because you're a citizen."
Yeah, par for the
but
course.
but yeah, I definitely got the chills during that. Our latest episode that we dropped last night regarding Qui-Gon Jinn, having done a lot of research and going back to the prequels to kind of pull some of the audio and some of the clips for last night's episode, I definitely came across that scene when Yoda basically says, this we're kind of heading into dangerous territory here, and they showed that scene in tonight's episode, and I was just blown away. I was just blown away, and I love that. I love how serious we are at this point because there's a lot riding on the decision going forward, and obviously we know that. But Brad, do me a favor. I'm going to step out of the chat for a bit so we can have Charles from Conversations head in here, and I'll go ahead and do a little behind the scenes, housekeeping here so I can keep focused on that. So, Brad, take it away. I'm going to give you the keys to this channel for a second and bring Charles in. And as we go forward, I'm going to do that a little bit. So I'll see you guys in a bit, but I'll remain online.
Sounds good. So, how did this episode change your opinion on? Well, I know a lot of people had some issues with the Ahsoka Maul battle last episode and how that turned out. The term Mary Sue being used. How does this? Yeah, I'm with you with the shaking of the heads. I'm doing the same thing, just can't see it. How does this change your view of Ahsoka and even Maul, having seen this episode? Rob, what do you think? Who wants to
go? It doesn't really change my opinion of Ahsoka or Maul, really. I think that it kind of goes back to the comment I made earlier that in the prior arc, I thought that they kind of regressed Ahsoka a little bit. They made her seem very unsure of herself and very much a teenager when she had really become very mature through her experiences in the Clone Wars and really had kind of come into her own with her powers as a Jedi, despite the fact that she never actually got raised to that level. So, and I would definitely say that there is enough that we know about Ahsoka from the rest of the content that she's been in that you could argue that she's probably the best unarmed combatant of all the Jedi. Her not having a lightsaber in her hands in no way, shape, or form puts her at a disadvantage. So I didn't have any issue with the combat between her and Maul in the previous episode. And again, I mean, what I thought was interesting about this episode was that she did kind of make it clear that she was on the fence about whether she was going to return to the Jedi Order. It wasn't going to happen right now, but it was clearly in her head. And I brought that up after some of the comments she made about referring to the Jedi Order and saying us in the previous episode. So I think that's an interesting, alley we could go down if you wanted to kind of theorize about what would have happened had the Jedi survived. But Maul has. The interesting thing about Maul is he has shown, especially through this season, that he has more of a strategic mind than you really ever got to see in any of the past seasons of Clone Wars, and certainly in the little bit we saw of him within the prequel films. So he was just kind of, a combat-trained powerhouse, essentially, when they first started with him. But he is now able to pick up on what Sidious's plan was after the fact. But I thought, from an Ahsoka standpoint, I thought that there were a couple of moments in this episode where her choosing not to act in some ways kind of helped drive the fall of Anakin. I mean, she could have warned the Jedi what Maul had said to her, but I kind of got the impression that she was doing for Anakin what Anakin had always done for her, which is to kind of have her back no matter what was against her. And in this case, it was probably a little misguided.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that it took me off guard, and I actually laughed at it, is how openly she told Maul she was flat out using him as a, I'm not teaming up with you. You're a distraction. And,
I'm not rooting for you.
Yeah. I thought that was, you guys think that was in character? BP, what do you think about that one?
I think she was at the point where she's pretty fed up with everything because everybody's always attacking her. If you really think about it, like she's always on the defense. So at that point, she's just like she's in fuck it mode.
Yeah.
Get Rex, survive, and use Maul as a distraction. I mean, it's a good plan because he's really good at that.
Red 4, what do you think?
There's several times in this episode where it looks like Ahsoka is close to going back to the Jedi Order. And every time it seems like she has that momentary thought, something happens and she's just as like, backs off and like, this is the reason why I left to begin with, forget it. And it's just so powerful. And just the ability to see her transformation from where she started to this point in time is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Trevor, you said you had a couple more points to make. What are your thoughts on Ahsoka?
Well, a couple different things. Is that, like my expectations were a lot grounded in the Ahsoka novel itself, because at the very beginning, before any of the chapters, they talk about Ahsoka dueling Maul and about how she's able to trap him. Of course, it's not seen, cut for cut what happened at the end of Phantom Apprentice. But then I was also just also thinking of the second and third episodes of season 2 of Rebels, where you have the Lost Commanders and Relics of the Old Republic, where you have Rex and you have Gregor and there's one other one, and then they talk about how they got their inhibitor chips removed. So I was already kind of thinking that maybe Rex had already had it before the Order 66 has happened, but nope, that's not. So that was pretty unexpected of sorts. And also, I gotta say, it's pretty lucky that the protocol droids didn't have any inhibitor chips in them, or else Ahsoka would not have survived. Like she needed those protocol droids to help her out, and pretty much isolating Rex and figuring out what Five's report is and that sort of thing. And I mean, I know this is kind of unrelated to Ahsoka, but I'm also kind of curious as to why Rex immediately decides, okay, let's execute Maul now, because he didn't receive any orders from Darth Sidious. Like, you'd think Darth Sidious would give him the order. Like, I know he's giving every single clone Order 66, but then it's like Maul's kind of a priority, at least in some ways, to Sidious. But it seems like Rex just does that without any orders, or just completely spontaneous. But
some orders come with sub orders to him. I don't know, maybe him being just a force wielder, that was an extension of Order 66. That's how I took it. Charles, thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, the episode was fantastic. Chills from the moment when I first started watching it. For me, Ahsoka really did sort of take a step forward in what she believed that she needed to do throughout this arc, or throughout this episode, and withholding the information that she got from Maul about Anakin's foretelling, or the foretelling of Anakin's story from Maul, was obviously critical. When she came to let him go to cause a distraction, she actually sent one of the clones up into the ceiling. So I was actually trying to count how many times we saw clone bodies being slammed into the ceiling, just like Vader did at the end of Rogue One. That was pretty cool. So I wonder if Maul saw that one and say, hey, that's a pretty neat trick. Maybe I'll use it too. And that line that she delivered to Maul reminded, right after they got outside, I don't remember the exact wording, but it reminded me of Hux with the Rebels when he was just before he was letting them go. He's not, I don't want you to win. I want him to fail. And it was a completely different perspective on the reason why she was letting Maul go. He was, at this point, became her tool versus the other way around, and that was fascinating.
Yeah, she was not rooting for Maul. She just had to be the distraction. Yeah, and I agree with Phoenix. Maul was an enemy of the Republic. So that's how he could have been, included in Order 66. I want to get back to the conversation between Ahsoka and Yoda, and perhaps what she would have said to Anakin. So I want you guys to think about that, and if that would have made a difference. But on the Jedi Temple's archives, we went into great detail on the clone conspiracy arc, and when Rex used the word fives again, I'm not gonna tell you how many times I get goosebumps just talking about this episode. I just thought that was classic. Rob, what are your thoughts about being able to connect this so greatly to that? I knew they had to connect it at somehow to some extent.
Yeah.
I was amazed. I'm like, you could.
Yeah.
I want to go just directly from that arc to this arc when both are finished. I think you can for that whole story. Your thoughts on having that arc flow to this arc?
Yeah, I just had a feeling that it was going to be, the fact that we had not seen any indication from Rex. I mean, they had given us some pretty clear shots of the side of his head where he had borne the scar in Rebels from having his chip removed, and it was pretty clear that it had not been removed. So, I mean, that was, and I was coming from the same place as Trevor, right? I read the Ahsoka book. I actually went back before this week's episode to see if anywhere in the Ahsoka book they clearly stated that it was on Mandalore, where the grave was, and I wasn't seeing that. But I very much had read that into it when I read the book, that that Order 66 was right after they captured Maul. He was able to escape immediately because they caught him in a ray shield, and Order 66 got triggered and all hell broke loose. But just as you said, the degree to which it connected was, it felt really good to have nailed it with the episode that we did on JTA podcast earlier in the week, and that our conversation was so on point around a lot of the things that happened here. And I just have to agree with everyone else that especially the way that they approached the music, there was just that feeling of dread from the very beginning of the episode. And even when they're having that exchange between Ahsoka and Rex, and you can just see the respect and the love that they have developed for each other throughout all their experiences together, and to know that they are seconds away from him trying to kill her was so powerful. And then as we talked about the whole partnering, no, not partnering, her using Maul, that is why she was not a great fit for the Jedi Order. She was very much in the mold of Anakin, but far more prone to do the right thing. She was able to kind of shrug off the attachment that is what burdened him down and forced him into making decisions that led him down that darker path.
Yeah, on Rob's podcast, we mentioned one of the things that came up during the Clone Conspiracy arc was when the Kaminoan Lama Su talked about how some of the clones' personality had been altered by having such a deep connection with their Jedi commanders. And we said that would be most visible or evident with Rex. And what I love about this one is I think how realistic it was in relation to his programming. It wasn't a complete, I'm going to disregard my programming, and what this chip is doing to me. It was just enough for him to have that moment of question, to give her time to react. So what are you guys' thoughts on welcome back there?
I see people.
What are y'all's thoughts on the connection between
talking,
Rex and
so there's that.
What was that?
He sees people and he can talk.
Maybe
Okay. All right. Well, all right. Okay. What are y'all's thoughts on the connection between Rex and also actually before we get into that, Phoenix makes another great point in the chat about it's an odd parallel on this one between Qui-Gon and Maul with the meditation in his cell. Maul is, to me, it looked like Maul was plotting the entire time. Even this guy, was I the only one that got the Silence of the Lambs feel?
Oh, definitely.
Whatever that ancient holding device was that he was in. But your thoughts on connection between Rex and Ahsoka in this episode? Red 4, what do you think?
You could even see it when he originally just bucks the bucks the programming, and is like his hands start shaking, and then he can't take it anymore, and he has to fire. And it's just I could just feel it. I'm like, oh no, is he going to do it? Is he really going to, or is he going to shoot somebody else? What's he going to do? And the bond there is just so strong that I think he's the only clone that I've seen so far that's been able to really resist that order or any of the orders that they were given. Most of the time, they just blindly follow along. Yep, that's our programming, and that's what we're supposed to do. But he's one of the ones that just flat out tries to resist it until he finally can't, and that just speaks volumes on the bond that they had. It's completely emotional scene.
Yeah, I think it was Roe that brought up on the JTA podcast about how amazingly they have given these clones, who are literally a carbon copy of one another, their own distinct personalities. How that's developed, how those personalities have developed over the last 3 years or plus of the Clone Wars. How do Rex's actions compare to Cody's actions? Cody didn't have any of this. So, any thoughts on that? Or obviously, Cody was a necessary thing for the story in Revenge of the Sith. Any thoughts onto the distinction of their actions between Cody and Rex for Order 66?
Well, I can say that. Definitely from what I've seen is that Obi-Wan and Cody have a good relationship, but they don't have like some super strong bond that would make Cody like have any resistance to disobey those orders from his inhibitor chip. Whereas Rex, we've already seen him have to deal with potentially disobeying orders with Pong Krell in the Umbara arc. Like that was like the central part of those 4 episodes was the struggle between Rex with following orders and also just doing the right thing to protect like his brothers and to like win the battle of Umbara of stuff. And we know that Ahsoka and Rex have this really strong bond, just like Rex also has with Anakin as well. But it did make more sense that he would be resistant. And I also then thought that maybe his inhibitor chip was already removed. He was acting like he was resisting and then was going to shoot like the other clones instead. But no, that's not what happened. But I still enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah, I was with you. We all know that his inhibitor chip was removed, but I thought it was before this too. At some point in the recent past, he would have done it, but it was nice to see that actually done. So this conversation or a message that Ahsoka could have passed on to Anakin. What do you guys think she would have said? What message would she have passed on to Anakin? And if that message had been passed on, do you think it would have changed the events of Revenge of the Sith? Charles, what do you think?
I think that if she had mentioned the foretelling of what the fall of Anakin was going to be, that obviously would have had far-reaching implications. But if that would have even been able to been acted upon at the point where they were in the story, I don't even know if that would have had any effect. It would probably go back to her wanting to speak to him a bit more, probably, what in my opinion at least, like what she would have wanted to have told him about the transition out of the Jedi Order after she saw him again before they split up, just before she split up, as he turned his back and walked out the door, which may have been more of an emotional sort of personal connection versus what all the hell is about to break loose on the cusp, what that was going to have an effect on the whether they're going to meet again or whether or not the circumstances were going to be where they could actually even have a conversation of personal nature. It was more, I think that she was holding back that story. I don't know if it's out of distrust too with the way she's even treated with Mace. I mean, talk about a slap in the face. She did say that she understood that decision, but my gosh, the way he just delivered that line, was like a cold dagger. Both times that I watched it and saw, it's like, wow, dude, that was that was brutal. And I'm thinking that the different part of her conversation was going to be more in the nature of a personal part.
Yeah, I want to welcome Cybersonic. Good evening to you as well. Cam in the chat thinks that maybe should have helped Anakin hold back a little bit longer. Maybe. Black Squadron, what do you think?
I was just gonna say the point that Trevor was saying about how the connection between Rex and Ahsoka, how powerful that was. Think about the relationship between Ayla and Bly with the way that he reacted. They shot the absolute hell out of her, even after she was dead. So that was the polar opposite of relationships.
Yeah, no love for Ayla. that was cold. Pat, can you hear me? Maybe. No.
We're working on him. We're working with him on technical issues.
Red 4, yeah. Red 4, what do you think? What do you think Ahsoka may have said?
I think she just would have warned him because still at this point, all we know is that there's a Sidious. They don't know who it is or who it's that it's actually referring to, the Chancellor. So I think she would have warned him that hey, this this Sidious character, whoever he may be, has already got you pegged and is already working on you. Who could it be? Here's his, here's the Sith name. Just giving him a little more information. And again, that could have held him back. At that point, that she wanted to talk to him. He was already with Palpatine at that point, so I think it probably would have been a little too late. I don't know. I think she just would have tried to give him as big of a warning as he could have gotten. I just don't think it would have made much of a difference.
Now, I might be in the minority in this, and I might get flame sprayed on Twitter for saying so. I'm not going to say that the Mortis arc is overrated. I don't think it's what everybody says it is. I mean, I thought it was interesting, a different way to look at the Force. I wasn't a big fan, even though I talk about the Bendu all the time and how I like that character, so I guess I'm a hypocrite. I wasn't a big fan of these physical manifestations of the Force with the father and the brother and the sister. But Anakin was able to get a glimpse of his potential future on that. But correct me if I'm wrong, and it's nice because this kind of ties back into that as well, and what Maul knows and what information he's working off of. But correct me if I'm wrong, Anakin didn't remember anything by the end of the Mortis arc, correct?
Yes, that's correct. The father took away that part of his memory.
Do you remember what was the? It's been a while since I watched the Mortis arc. Do you remember what was the basis for him not having any? Just you don't tamper with the future. Was that the basic premise for not letting him know what he might become?
Yes, to my knowledge, it's basically like this is, or I guess this is only like I don't know, that this is only a possibility of your future, and that it's still unwritten. You can still have the ability to mold it how you want it to be.
I think I think the Mortis arc was especially now in hindsight. It's and Trevor, yeah, you mentioned it. It's about making your own choice. And Anakin during the Mortis arc did not believe what he was seeing. He basically rejected that possible future. I think obviously he was horrified at what he saw, and the father basically said, this is what's going to happen. And Anakin was like, I don't believe it. It's not. So I think at that point, I might venture and say that the father pretty much took that memory out, and to prove a point without Anakin knowing how he was going to turn up. And if it ends up that Anakin turns out that way, then in the father's eyes, he'd be right. It's almost like he's proving his point, or at least he's, it's kind of like a predestined outcome. So that's how I saw it. I mean, Trevor, we talked a little bit about that in a previous episode where, you can say that you can take that episode right out of the lore and nothing would happen, but you have to think about it outside the box and really realize, I guess, in your own way that the father was right. The father was kind of pointing out that the force can, although it can be fluid, there are certain benchmarks in history of time that have to come to play in order for those stories to come about. So I don't know. I really enjoyed the Mortis arc. I mean, initially, again, we just talked about it, but initially it was a little bit confusing. But like, you really, really have to kind of sink your teeth into the overall concept of who these characters are, how you assign identity to them, especially now that Ahsoka is part of this whole story. But I really do think that Filoni and Lucas were kind of getting somewhere with this story arc, and I don't think that for whatever reason, I don't think that they were able to flesh out the rest of it, whatever it is that they had in mind to plan out. Agree? Disagree?
I mean, that's possible. Like, then again, it's still been a while since I've seen the Mortar stuff, but I don't know. I can try to analyze as much as I want, but for me, I just don't think I'm ever going to look at those three as, oh yes, those are must-watch Star Wars, the Clone Wars episodes. For me, that they're still a bit unnecessary, but for all those people that love and adore like the intricacies of father, son, and daughter, and how they relate to Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Anakin, I mean, yeah, that's completely fine for you all to love and appreciate. I just don't think I'll be one of those people.
I am going to jump out again because Rob has found something that's very interesting, and I want you guys to talk about it. I'll put it up on the screen when I leave. So hold on a second. I'll talk to you guys in a bit. Here we go.
Yeah, I just basically, as I was watching it the second time, it was interesting because when I first saw the containment unit for Maul, it was pretty clear. It had a lot of Mandalorian helmets and everything on it, but I think Ro's going to try to bring it up closer. What I ended up seeing the second time around is it totally looked like Yoda's face when he's meditating.
That is on.
Oh, I see it.
Wow.
Not the best quality photo, but
That's such a dick move by the Mandalorians.
if it was them, it wasn't. It just wasn't something that was done by the visual effects artist to kind of sneak something in there. I don't know necessarily that it has a ton of symbolism, but I was like, oh my god, it totally looks like a face, and especially the middle Mandalorian helmet was so elongated, it just looked a little bit strange to me. So I just thought that was a cool little Easter egg.
That's a fantastic spot because, I mean, it's Yoda. It's the ultimate Force user, and like talk about the ultimate cage for the Force user inside behind that symbol is extremely. Right. It's almost insulting. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. I was so focused on Maul's face and just what little bit that you could see of him. I was just staring at the screen and almost leaning in, trying to see what expression that he was making. And I didn't even notice that at all. But, you step back and you look at it and wow, yeah, that great observation.
You might be a Star Wars nerd. I mean, that's That was a good catch. Go ahead, Rob.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it. No, I was just it's why it's always so cool to watch these episodes more than once. I mean, the first time through, you're so caught up in the emotion of what's going on and kind of the big picture that when you go back and rewatch it, that's when you start catching the little intricacies. And we've talked about it before. I mean, you can watch an episode of the Clone Wars and then go back and watch a film that you've watched 100 times, and all of a sudden you have completely new perspective for things that are happening within that film, and you see things in a completely different light. And that's one of the great things about Star Wars. They just they keep putting out content that makes you rethink what came before, and you see different motivations and you see different outcomes from it.
Yeah, the question: did they ever say the name of that thing? I don't think they did, but that was another good nod to the old Republic times where the Jedi and the Mandalorians were at war with each other. And the Mandalorians didn't trust the Jedi or any Force wielder for that matter. So that was a good nod for that. But taking a quick break from this and talking about some real life events, Charlie, how you doing, man?
I'm all right. Hanging in there, trying to anyway.
Hey, I will say before we move on, that question, that K2S bro, is David from the Black Squadron podcast.
Okay. So K2S bro, got it. Well played. Yeah, Charlie, I'm sorry that your Clone Wars day had to be spoiled with a start like it had.
It's all right. It's one of those things, I guess.
Hey, I think a trip to the med bay was perfect.
Right, I got to watch all three on the all three in the row while I waited, and it was nice and quiet, and I could focus. So, well, not too bad. But I am going to have to head out. But I did want to make 2 points before I did.
Sure.
And they're both having to do with Maul. The main one is I thought it was interesting that you see Maul have the same force feeling when Order 66 hit that Ahsoka had. When we first see it in A New Hope, when Obi-Wan, catches his breath and you can feel it suddenly, all the voices cry out, all the feelings, I was always thinking that was just a Jedi thing, because that's all you see in Revenge of the Sith is how the Jedi are accepting this and what they're feeling and their emotions. But then now you see in the Clone Wars that even the dark side users can feel this as well. And I was like, wow, that just it opened up a whole new door. And the second one was just the gleeful laugh that Maul had when he realized the whole plan and what was going on. And that realization, and it hit him, and that smile, and his eyes twinkled, and he's like, "Ha ha! I know exactly what's going on." I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. You couldn't have gotten it any other way other than in this Clone Wars. So it was, absolutely amazing. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on those.
Yeah, and I'm thinking now that you just said that, he was, and I love that moment as well. He may have been thinking back to his what he said in Episode 1. At last, we'll reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last, we'll have our revenge. Maybe he was realizing at that point how far ahead Palpatine was planning, and recognizing that it wasn't, that point wasn't the time for action, and that this was a long-term plan that Sidious had. So maybe rethinking his role in the whole thing. But I thought that was classic as well. And as far as go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's for him, it's the poetry of it, right? It's the fact that not only will the Jedi fall, but they're not going to fall to the Sith directly. They're going to fall to their clone troops who they have formed these bonds with and who they have come to trust. I mean, how many times do we see the Jedi turning their back to their clone troopers? Which is what allowed them to get the drop on them. And to that point, to your earlier question about Clone Commander Cody, there's that scene in the first episode of the arc where Cody is on the bridge. They're going up against the droids, and that missile's coming right for him. And that's when Obi-Wan swoops in. He cuts the missile in half and saves Cody's life. And again, we know that within a matter of days from that, Clone Commander Cody's going to basically tell his troops to blow Obi-Wan off that Varactyl that he's riding around Utapau on. So, it just goes to show the huge swing in the relationship between the Jedi and the clones.
All right. Did anybody catch the "I'm okay, kid" reference to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? I didn't catch that, but it doesn't surprise me that there was a nod to Indiana Jones. They're pretty good at doing that. Anybody else catch that?
Nope.
Well, no, and I just saw Temple of Doom less than a week ago, so now I
Yeah.
feel a little bit embarrassed.
If they do put out another Indiana Jones movie, I wouldn't be surprised if that thing that Maul was in shows up in the background or something. That's what they like to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, I mean, it looked kind of it had that old looking feel to it, that ancient feel to it. So, yeah, Sam Witwer has been amazing throughout this whole thing. And for anybody who hasn't, have you guys seen him do his voice acting? Like I knew he was amazing on the video game Force Unleashed. It wasn't some of the most dramatic acting he's ever done. As Starkiller. But if you watch his voice acting, this guy's literally spitting all over the microphone to sell his Maul character. So definitely kudos to Sam. Ro, you back?
I am back, and I just had to go get my my currency.
Is that your best car?
My best car here.
Hey, Ro, I just shared with you in our group chat the Sam Witwer behind the scenes, him doing the Scream Kenobi, so people can see how he is when he delivers his lines.
And if anybody plays Star Wars Battlefront, the fact that they added that voice line where he just screams Kenobi is classic. Just another reason to play Star Wars Battlefront.
I do it every day.
Scream Kenobi or play Battlefront.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm really enjoying is just the caliber of everyone's performances. I mean, even when we started this story arc, there were subtleties in the performances of the actors, and even in the way that they are drawing the characters and some of the little like the micro expressions between the characters, especially when they're talking to each other. It's like next level. I think we haven't seen anything like this. My only concern, my only gripe about some of the episodes that we've seen is, George Lucas has this way of kind of leaving some of these wide shots up for just a tad longer because there's just so much beauty in in each frame that you're looking at around, especially if you're watching it on a big cinematic screen. Lucas leaves these shots up for just half a second, 2 seconds more, just so you can kind of your eyes can go around. Like that first shot when that gunship goes over and it just kind of disappears off into the distance. I would have liked to have seen that for just a few more seconds before they cut to Ahsoka, looking up. It's stuff like that, but it's definitely beautifully drawn and beautifully designed series. This last series, even the sister arc. They're really bringing their A game to this stuff. Have you guys noticed any other kind of cinematic qualities this story arc, especially? Now obviously they're paralleling with Revenge of the Sith and the films, so it's almost like it's a deliberate thing when they start doing that, because a lot of these, especially the wide shots where the ships and the spaceships and the scenes in space, I mean, sometimes you really can't tell between the cartoon and the thoughts.
I made that comment in the chat just earlier that I felt through this entire season, but especially these past 2 episodes, like Rob said, I think that they've kicked it up a notch. It felt like I was in a theater. It was cinematic, obviously. The music, it was moving in every sense, and it only lends weight to the story. All said, we know what's coming. It's the intensity of the emotions of knowing how this is going to develop. And Quasi hoped that Rex somehow discovered his chip prior to Order 66, and we found out that he didn't. And it was not soul crushing for me because of my like of Rex, but it was certainly it was a great interpretation, but it was also wonderful to have that that question answered. So I would say I'll still be thinking about it, but yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah,
One
we're
thing I'd like to say. Oh, sorry. One thing I'd like to say, Pat. Of course, Pat was hoping to join us tonight, and he had a whole host of notes and stuff written down for everybody. But one thing that he picked up on, which was really cool, was one of the droids that helped out with the final escape and the capture of Rex. With that extra arm, looks just like Chop, and of course,
Yep.
who voiced Cheap? It's Dave Filoni,
Dave
who also did Chop, which is fantastic.
Yeah, those are great callbacks. Great callbacks. You know, this story arc is going to break us. We got what? One more, I think.
Yep. Uno mas.
Yeah, so you know, I'm really excited to, and I really hope Disney Plus does this and kind of releases like a single viewing. And obviously, you can watch it back to back and just hit next. But you know, some of us are getting old. We don't want to hit that next button. We just want to lay back and just watch the whole thing one you know, in one swing.
Hey, Ro, think about the release of the original Clone Wars movie. What was that? 2008. Is that when it
Oh
came out?
yeah, and
And
that's
think about
go
how
ahead.
this would look. Yeah, think about how this would look compared to that, and how far they've come. I always thought, you know, I watched that just a couple months ago. That's a lot more entertaining than what people give it credit for, I think. And I'm still waiting to see what happened to Jabba's son because he's still out there. But think about how this would look in the theater. And you said cinematic. You're the showbiz one, but does music count? Because someone mentioned music earlier,
Yeah,
and that music was just like that. Someone mentioned the sense of dread. You had it from, like, you knew
from the
it's
first
saying,
frame.
yeah. You know, it's crazy when the Siege of Mandalore was the calm before the storm,
Yes.
and it literally was. And that music, like, you got to give them credit. That was just on point from start to finish.
That's what I noticed, you know, when I sat down and watched it an hour ago or so with my son. You know, that Lucasfilm logo comes up, and then you hear that low tone. You knew that something's going to be messed up here in the next couple of minutes, because that definitely was emotional. I mean, all the way through. I mean, and that's one of the reasons. That's why I love Star Wars, when Star Wars takes itself seriously. And I know it's entertaining and it's for children, whatever. It's, you know, Caesar had this good point where, you know, it's really great when Star Wars focuses on a really good story and doesn't worry about selling toys and selling tickets and agendas or whatever everybody else complains about. But this is really a great example of how, you know, just stick to the story that you want to tell it the best way you can. And these guys are doing it, man. These guys are really doing it.
Yeah, I agree completely, Ro. Like, stick to the story, do the best you can, like that. I'm all for that. All for that.
And you
some
know,
of
I
those
mean, obviously, you don't start a multi-million-dollar production, you know, movie or whatever, and say, you know, I don't want to tell the best story I can. I want to do this, but you know, sometimes it just kind of gets away from them. And I hope that between the success of the Clone Wars final series on Disney Plus and the success of Mandalorian season 1, I really hope that you know, the suits upstairs can kind of you know, sit back and take a look at, you know, why is this working? Why has fans come together for the Clone Wars and stuff like that? So I'm really hoping that we get some really quality things going forward.
The reason
Somebody
why
was
it's
going to say something?
working, the reasons why it's working is because it's stories that everybody already knows. People fear change, they fear what they don't know. That's why there's a large subset of fans who've watched the sequels and say it's a bad story or not a cohesive story. It's a story they don't know every single second of, so they hate it, they fear it, they change. It's just, I don't think there was this whole thing about the sequels not having a story in mind is a farce. Sorry, a tangent. I keep seeing it in the comments, and you guys have mentioned it a couple times. I think it's just, we know what's happening in Clone Wars. The Mandalorian story wasn't like a whole new deal. It's the same old story beats we always get, but it's still awesome. Don't get me wrong, I'm in love. I mean, after today's episode, I stared at the credits for 10 minutes because I was so in awe at everything I just saw, and I knew what was happening, but still. But I think it's just what you know is fear. What you don't know is fear.
Yeah, I'll push back a little bit on it. We talked about it on the Scarif podcast a couple of times. I think for me the sequel trilogy was a little disjointed. You can tell now, especially with 7, 8, and 9, that's all already out there. Mandalorian is for the most part kind of a new story, and people tend to love it. I think, in music, there's only 7 notes and some flats and sharps, but there's all sorts of wonderful music that gets, played with those 7 notes. I think stories might be the same thing, but I believe that as long as the story's good, people will flock to it, and this is a prime example of it. We're not gonna say that the sequel trilogy stories are not good. They're just not, for me personally. Roe from Chicago, they just didn't hit for me. But I'm definitely not the only one in that camp. So there's something to be said about that. But I'm in love with Star Wars. It flows through my veins, and everybody here, I'm sure. We just want some good entertaining, and I think that's definitely what we're getting in this last and final season of Clone Wars. If real fast,
Hey, Ro, can I jump in just real quick on that?
Jump.
Number one, story. That's what it's all about. And I think 90. Of course, 86% of statistics are made up on the spot. But I think 90% of what Disney is releasing these days is, well, I can't say that with Mandalorian. Anyway, I'll get back to my point. A lot of what they're putting out is to sell Galaxy's Edge. If you read the books, if you read the comic books, even some of the aspects of the sequel trilogy, it's to sell tickets to Galaxy's Edge. Stop that. Galaxy's Edge, that's a mecca for us Star Wars fans anyway. Galaxy's Edge will sell itself. They don't need to put any other focus on Galaxy's Edge. If we can show up to a Millennium Falcon, we're going to show up to a Millennium Falcon. If we can build our own lightsaber, we will travel to Florida or to California to build our own lightsaber. That place will sell itself. It doesn't, hearsay from one Star Wars geek to the next. I'll let you retort there. I don't think they need to put any more focus on, these are the stories they need to focus on, and let Galaxy's Edge do its own thing, which should have been Tatooine or Naboo anyway, but that's neither here nor there. Rob?
I didn't need to reply. I was just saying that you were talking about me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll go there. Like, I was sold. I'm less sold on Galaxy's Edge now than when I first heard about it, because they put so much effort into selling it through the different forms of literature and stuff like that. This is this guy's junk shop and that sort of thing. I'm less likely to go there. If they just said there's a Star Wars land down in Florida, I'm there tomorrow. So just let it sell itself, and then that's why there's been very little discourse about the Mandalorian, even less about this last episode or this last season of Clone Wars. Get back to the story, no matter what time period you're talking about. Hopefully we see that with High Republic, that they get back to story and not any other ulterior motives to sell tickets to anything or what have you. I'm off my soapbox now. Shortly, for very briefly.
And get off my lawn, damn it. Get off my lawn, damn it.
Hey, punks.
Yeah, we talked about this. This franchise is 42 plus, years old, and everybody's got their own trilogy. Obviously, for us older folks, it's the OT. You got people that love the PT, and now you got, youngsters that love the ST. You gotta bring them in somehow, and I think George Lucas did it for decades, and now it's Disney's turn. So as long as we have some more great stories, I'm always open to new Star Wars.
The end.
The end.
And The Mandalorian proves that, right?
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, again, I know these stories are similar in nature to the old westerns and things like that, but for the most part, we didn't know what to expect going into episode 1 of The Mandalorian. So they're all brand new. Everything is new until we, revisit. But we'll see what happens. I'm obviously pumped for next week's final episode. Do you guys think?
Predictions.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, what if the fan reaction is so great that Kathleen Kennedy picks up the phone and calls Dave Filoni and says, "You know what?
Retires.
We got to do one more season." What do you guys? Can you guys see anything else coming about? I know we're kind of at the point where we know what happens. Does anybody think that Clone Wars can live on to another season? And if so, what are the stories going to be?
Well, I definitely think it can. I just don't think they're going to, because they're going to end it off the perfect note, the end of the Siege of Mandalore and the end of this. But I mean, obviously they could finish the Utapau arc with better animation, because you can already see the story reels on YouTube. They can do that. They can do the Son of Dathomir 4-issue comic thing, but make that each issue be its own Clone Wars episode, which they can do. And they can also do the Dark Disciple 8-episode series. They can also do the Cad Bane and Boba Fett bounty hunting thing, which they did show a clip of that in Star Wars Celebration Orlando, where Cad Bane and Boba Fett had the showdown of sorts. So there's tons of potential. I just think there's less than a 4% chance of it happening.
Oh, 4%. Okay.
Yeah. Less than 4. But I mean, of course, I'd love it. Because they're already giving us the Siege of Mandalore, so to give us extra stuff would be fantastic. I just don't think it would fit really with what they're pushing. If that makes sense.
But okay.
All right.
I'm still waiting for the Inferno Squadron, cartoon or whatever they want to do. That 20 years is, I think, would have the best stories. The fledgling rebellion. We got rebels, but you have Ahsoka out there operating as fulcrum. You got Bail, and you got Mon Mothma out there. Putting this all together. That 20 years right there is wide open. To me that's a gold mine, and they'd be stupid not to capitalize on those years right there. They've put some emphasis on it, which is good, but I still think it's wide open.
It is. I was going to ask Trevor because he brought it up as far as the Ahsoka novel, and I wasn't completely sure because, again, as you guys know, when I read something, it goes in one ear and goes out the other, and I can't remember a lot of the stuff that I read, but I did manage to read the Ahsoka novel. Obviously, we are getting a glimpse of what happened here at the beginning of the Ahsoka novel, but I was hearing some rumblings online about how this arc is kind of either not retconning, but just kind of changing things a little bit from the novel. Are you seeing that? Can you explain that to us?
Well, I think Rob would probably do a better job at that, but right before chapter 1 even starts, you have about 6 or 7 pages of like Ahsoka like being on Mandalore and fighting Maul, and like he says, it was so nice of your former masters to send you out alone and spare me the exertion of a proper fight. You're not even a real Jedi. These like lines of dialogue and stuff that we did not get in the Phantom Apprentice of stuff. So
Lady
yeah, I know. And then like, where's your army, Lady Tano?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely some lines and stuff that, yeah, this is now not really what happened. So I guess this is like somewhat non-canon, this like prelude before chapter 1 even starts of the book. But I mean, it still gets the point across in the fact that Maul does get trapped in a way by Ahsoka, sort of thing. So
it's her PTSD is kind of scrambled her memory.
Do we lose Ro? Where's he at?
You brought
so many.
Can we hear that? That is the question.
Hi. Hey, we're live.
All right, we can start now.
Hooray.
All right.
We got
So what's everybody been up to?
All right, so Clone Wars. What does everybody think about that last episode? Huh?
The
Star Wars happened. Pat.
Marquez sisters. Let's start there.
All right, the floor's yours.
I
Yeah.
heard parts.
Okay. Pat,
Something
you've got
about
about
the Temple of Doom. I don't know.
you
What
got
part of
25
getting your
minutes.
internet working involved a ladder?
No.
He was going to hang himself if he
Many
couldn't get
parts.
on.
My internet
No.
work can involve a ladder. Many parts.
When his camera goes in and out and he's on that ladder, it's going to be hilarious, and you know it. Well, all right.
No, this one, no.
All right. So you caught the least important part, which was the Indiana Jones reference.
Right.
Your thoughts on the episode?
Okay, so I kept looking at the Yoda face in the mall chamber thing as my idea. Nobody else thought of that. I'm sure. Oh, there it is. Perfect.
Well played.
Yeah. No, but that's fantastic. I love that. But he's very very much in a Hannibal Lecter type of contraption there inside, and I love how it opens up and then she's like tapping on the buttons to unlock him, like she knows the code or whatever. But
8108.
Oh, a couple of things. I noticed somebody on Twitter say that the fact that Ahsoka knew Anakin's password is such like a little sister thing to know,
yeah,
and a little. I think Joey Rosales noticed that that could be an Easter egg. Can somebody quickly look up the release of the original Clone Wars movies? Was it August 10th?
Yeah.
2000?
Okay.
That's what someone said in the chat here in the chat,
Yeah.
and I know it was August of 08, so I'm not sure if that's the exact date, but it was definitely August of 08.
Let's see. Yeah, it was August 15th, 2008.
Okay.
That was the early release showing. That's what that was.
Yeah, perhaps.
true.
Close, but yeah, those are pretty cool things. That would have been a sweet little Easter egg, I think. But sorry, Pat, you were explaining that ladder.
I was, yes. It's my goal to have the high ground. So,
Of course.
Don't go dropping the hardware. You just got it working.
That's my mic.
Technical difficulties,
house.
yes. Beverage
This is
difficulties, no.
this is the COVID mic. You don't want it back.
Oh, this is true.
That's true.
Oh man.
We did talk about your cheap the droid, the Chop Cheap Dave Filoni.
Yeah, he's got the little pincer hand and the like radar dish on top.
correct.
And he's like rap, 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 very chop like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Chop
I mean,
it,
they're both
chop-ish.
astromechs, so that was kind of cool.
He does vasectomies.
Oh,
Don't they all?
Discount
must-
vasectomies.
Ooh, all right. Okay.
Not 3.
No refunds.
Sorry.
Hey, so
I mean, you just
we're
get a new one if he messes up. It's no big deal.
Oh, here, Joey's message here. He should have specified that the film premiered in Egyptian theater on August 10th, 2008.
I thought that was assumed. I thought, yeah.
So the Egyptians have the advantage. Okay.
Hey, what's this last episode going to
And
hold
by
for
the
us?
way, Joey, I apologize. I don't know.
I want to hear Pat's thoughts on
Again, I mean,
his notes.
My thoughts.
I actually
on
want to hear on some notes.
You talk. No, you talk.
Who talks first?
I'm not hanging up. You hang up.
I just want to see Pat wear that Ahsoka helmet thing on the back wall there.
Home built, by the way.
I mean,
On the ladder.
I have to use the ladder to get to it. There's that. No, I built that for my daughter, whose head is unfortunately about as big as mine. So, and not as big as Charles though. So
I do have a
I
big
didn't
head.
have to go out and buy double material. It's fine. But I did use my head for most of the construction because she's impatient and wouldn't sit and wait. So it's I mean, I could dance if you say monkey dance, but
Charles, how do you put up with this all the time?
I'm just sitting here eating popcorn, enjoying the show. Well,
I give him
thank you.
booze.
Yeah, see, there you go, booze. There you go. Everybody
Oh,
takes a
man.
drink.
That's everybody. There we go. All
There we
right,
go. It's perfect.
all around. So
I've got a question for Brad, actually. Do you
It's
think
$2.99 a minute.
that's where those charges are coming from?
Yeah. I got to pay for my vices somehow. Yeah, go ahead.
Wow, Candy Legs. That's an interesting name you chose.
Mhm.
Do you think now that the sequel trilogy is actually finished, do you think that the selling of Galaxy's Edge will go on the back burner?
No, because hashtag Disney. I actually I don't know. I think it might get worse because of this whole COVID business. Because Disney's going to be all right in the long run. Disney will always be there, but they are taking a huge hit on a daily basis. With Galaxy's Edge not being open, as far as I know, they're not open to the public. So they're taking a huge daily hit on that. So with that being said, I think they'll put more focus. Hopefully, maybe they like Rose said, they have to be listening to the fans. So maybe they change it up and maybe they make it a little bit more subtle. I think it's still going to be part of the books. I think now that we're going to the High Republic storyline, none of that I don't think is supposed. It's supposed to be on the frontier. I don't know. I'm the first reference we get to the outpost. I'm done with it. I'll be honest with you. I mean, as long as they don't mention that stupid thing and what's his name, the pirate's not somehow alive during the High Republic as well.
Hondo?
Yeah, Hondo. As long as Hondo's not there, like 400 years earlier, I'm good. But first mention of the outpost, I'm done with it. So I think with the High Republic, we'll get a new focus on the stories. I think they're gonna. Did you guys hear the news about the Obi-Wan just got a new writer, I guess. So maybe they're changing direction with that as well. But yeah, I think there will be somewhat. I'm not sure less of a focus, but I think it might be a different way of going about it. It might be more subtle. Hopefully.
So I just want to reiterate too, because for me, I guess I hear what you guys are saying, but for me, I just posted a comment from the chat.
Can I? Yeah, I gotta get that one.
Yeah. It's all yours. It's all yours.
Yeah. It's not that, and thank you for the question. It's not that. So I am 100% nerd. So I love references to different things, right? I live, and Ro knows this. I live for Easter eggs, right? Those Easter eggs that everybody hunted down. I live for that stuff. So when I first started, and you really have to be a huge nerd to notice this across the board, like I have. But when you see your first few references to it, yeah, that's pretty cool. But then when you realize that every single thing that they're putting out is somehow tied into it, that's when it's like, oh my God, this is relentless. But they're so obvious about it. It's so blatantly obvious that what was the actually when the book called Galaxy's Edge? Black Spire. That's Black Spire. I mean actually that was a pretty good story. And here's to further elaborate on your question. Here's where I'm at on that. Obviously, that book was 100% sell for Galaxy's Edge. I get that. You can look at the cover and figure that out. So you know this going into it when you read it. But then it had no tie-in whatsoever to the Rise of Skywalker. Vi Maradi, I think is her name. She's a great character, and there was other characters. There's about 4 or 5 other characters that were introduced in that book that were really great characters. I'm like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing these characters in the Rise of Skywalker, even if it's just for a 5-second or 2-second Easter egg. And I was let down when none of that. Like I read every, and I bitch about this on the Scuttlebutt. I read every single, even Chuck Wendig's Aftermath series, every single book I put myself through to make sure I had the full story of what's happening in the movies. And I was so mad that I like Trevor's 4% number. 4% at most of that information made it into the movies. I haven't put myself through another reading of the Aftermath series. How many references were there to Palpatine, to dark science, and to cloning? And they're there, just not much. But it's not. Yeah, you're a huge corporation. You're going to sell your own stuff. I get that. But they got rid of the old EU because they wanted to clean up the continuity and they wanted to control the canon. I understand that. But if you're going to do that, then they need to be integrated. I read all the comic books. I read all the books, obviously the cartoons and the shows, but they need to be integrated with the movies. If you're going to have these offshoots, give us something back. Let me see Vi Maradi in the background, standing in the background. That's it. That's all I want. And it wasn't there. So for them to put that book out there as a selling tool, it didn't sit well with me. Hopefully that answers your question. And I'll try not to talk about it ever again. I don't make any guarantees.
Well, one of the things that we talked about this on the on Coruscant Radio Underground when we did our novelization episode with them. We're not against like the immersive experience. What we're against is, and one of the things that really ticks me off is when you see a movie and then there's a lot of questions in the movie that are not like, I guess secondary questions or questions that really don't matter. But there's like big plot points in the movie that you're like, huh? And then you have to read a book in order to, get those questions answered. There's a difference between reading a book to enhance your experience and versus reading a book to explain what you saw. And I think a lot of times, especially in the latter incarnation of Star Wars, once Disney, acquired it, it happens a lot. It's happening a lot more and more. And again, we're all for immersive experiences and stories because Star Wars obviously is a large galaxy. It's a big universe that George created and Disney is continuing. And we're going to get some of this overlap. And, there's also the camp that says, why do we always have to see the same characters in different things? I mean, it is a big universe. So, there's obviously there's a middle ground, but, it's not that we don't like the immersive experiences. It's, I guess give it a little bit more thought before you, go into it, I guess. But yeah, thank you OM for that question. We don't, again, if you guys, listen to the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast, we don't shy away from one, our opinions, and two, just kind of, having everybody kind of chime in and ask us, we're cool with that.
Yeah, everybody knows I'm down for shameless self-promotion. I just don't like when other people do it.
Cool. I think that was another podcast that we had a message from years ago, no?
Maybe.
It's still in the...
Borg Gullet, the college years, I'm down for. Borg Gullet at any time in his life, I'm down for. And I am also down for the Ben Quadraneros movie. I'm down. And the award-winning Pit Team. I'm down for their life story as well, which ended tragically when they went through the engine.
You don't see Borg Gullet and Claude having a love story?
I mean, I'm in tears right. I'm a little bit misty right now just thinking about that. I mean, he knows the truth.
Right.
All right. Actually, what if Borg Gullet had a detective series where he was just a detective? He just went around putting his slimy tentacles on everybody. It worked for Detective Pikachu. I think it can work for Detective Gullet as well.
Oh boy, I'm just watching the number of people in chat.
I'm not even drinking, if that tells you anything. So, hey, Ro, are we going to talk about the last episode or what?
Okay, I'm good.
Oh yeah,
Trevor's gone. Trevor's gone.
You know,
All right.
I'm just happy that Trevor made his bed this time. So
every time he's
nice.
been on 10.
yeah.
I bet
You shamed him, Rob. You shamed him.
I know.
Exactly.
Is-
I'm not
That's
even.
why it's
I'm not
focused.
even getting checks from his mother or anything.
We love you, T. We love you.
Is OM still here with us? Hope we didn't scare off OM. Hope we're still there.
No, I don't know if you can tell. Give us a shout out if you're still with us, OM. But yeah, you know, this last episode, what do you guys think we'll be seeing next week? We saw a lot of crossover from you know, the film, but what do you guys? Did you guys hear all the voiceovers? When Ahsoka was having her little panic attack on the bridge of the ship,
yeah.
and you hear you know, Anakin and Palpatine and all those subtleties. That was really good.
Yeah, they're all the voices from the show doing the lines from the film,
Yeah.
which was brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah. The continuity was just spine chilling. I mean, I've used that a couple of times, but I was watching this you know, at lunch break today, and you know, wishing I could just spend another 3 hours watching this thing 3 times or 4 times over. And that scene, close to tears because of the impact of the tendrils back to the movie and the impact of what she's feeling, and we know what's coming next. And amazing, simply amazing.
Well, that goes hand in hand as well with the scene where, you know, Mace and Yoda are talking to the council and having that conversation, and Mace is talking about the plot to destroy the Jedi, and you know, it goes right up to that point where you see it cut after Yoda makes his statement, you know, about treading very carefully, and then they turn and start talking to Ahsoka. So, you know, it's another one of those things. They folded it perfectly into the timeline of the movie, and I thought that was awesome how they pulled that off. And again, I'll go back to the stuff that Ahsoka chose not to say, the warning that she could have given them about the fact that Maul had mentioned that Skywalker was the one that was being, you know, basically handpicked by Sidious, and he'd had that vision, and she didn't want to talk about it. And I get that she's protecting Anakin, but you know, apparently she had some attachment still left that kind of twisted her thinking.
Why do you think that she decided not to say anything at that point?
I mentioned it earlier. I think it has to do with the fact that Anakin, on so many occasions when nobody else had faith in Ahsoka, Anakin was always there for her, and she, you know, felt a sense of loyalty to him and the need to always have his back and always believe in him. And she just couldn't allow herself to think that he could possibly turn to the dark side, given that she had such a close relationship. I mean, this was what, a day after she'd last seen him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of questions there.
And screw Mace, that's why.
Oh yeah, I noticed that too. Somebody said that earlier in the chat. I even mentioned that to my son.
No, I disagree. I think Mace gets a bad rap. I think they never showed the coolest parts of Mace. I mean, they do show that he's the only Jedi that can stand up to Sidious in a fight, but they don't really do anything to really let the viewers know about his Vapad fighting style and the fact that he is kind of straddling that line with the dark side when he fights.
Totally.
And, you know, I don't think the Shatterpoint thing is necessarily canon anymore, but that was always a really cool Jedi ability, kind of a rare Jedi ability within the EU. And it would have been cool if they would have carried that on a little bit, you know, where he could kind of see the breaking point for any event.
He's a dark sider. Rob, discuss.
I mean, if you look at the way he delivered that line, the way he
Yeah.
said, "Sorry, citizen," that was an absolute. And who
Yeah.
deals in absolutes? But
That's what I'm
totally,
talking about.
because the way he said it was completely dismissive, and regardless of the fact of the great challenge that Ahsoka just helped perform on the side, right, with a sort of unsanctioned capture of Maul, and she brought him to them with the best intentions, of course, of hoping to solve this mystery, uh, yet, and all her time within as a Padawan with Anakin, and he can turn on a dime that quickly. He's like, you know what? You're out of the club. Sorry, buddy. You're done.
Mhm.
So that completely puts him. I'll go back to Trevor's 4%.
4%.
96% at that line of Sith of how quickly he just absolutely shut the door on her. And but for the character, that's fine. I mean, for Mace, for that character, it's a great way of doing it, and I get it. And it sucks, but you sort of like the bad guys. But man, that the way he delivered that, I still obviously have a few issues with it, but very well done part of the story.
You could make an argument though that he is basically trying. You could be seen as a way to tempt her to coming back to the Jedi Order. If she has all the access of being a Jedi without having to commit to the Order, what incentive does she ever have to come back to the Order?
If you're sure the Jedi, she get the information she wants.
And I would love to take on the whole Mace. Mace is a dark sider. You could say the same thing to a certain extent about Plo Koon. He used electric judgment, which is basically the Jedi version of Sith Force lightning.
Ooh.
And that was a big question for the Jedi. And basically he had to do some soul searching and determine that he wasn't using it with hatred. So there are some things that we see that are, it goes back to the conversation we started into on the podcast this past week for JTA and kind of didn't get fully into. I know you guys have covered a little bit on Scarif, but is the dark side based on the powers? Is it based on your intent with what you're doing with the Force? Is it based on, what do you define that as?
Right. Yeah,
Still-
we definitely dove into that on Scarif. I'm sorry. Who did I?
No, I was just saying that his words were more mafia than holy order. You want to come back to the family, you can come back to the family. Otherwise, you're out.
La Familia. Huh?
Jedi are
La Familia, and she didn't want no part of it, so she was excommunicated.
So one of our followers posted a question here. I put it on screen, and let's see what Cybersonic 8472 has to say. So the Clone Wars cartoon greatly improves on the prequels. Would we be down for a sequel trilogy cartoon? And do we think that one can improve our opinion of the sequel trilogy? That's a very interesting question. And Trevor, you got your hand up.
Yeah,
and,
I do. Okay.
Let's check. Let's see what happens. Go
Well,
for it.
Well, I think that depends on like the story itself that they're going to tell, because they have given us Resistance, which I don't know about how you all feel, but I was not much of a fan of Resistance. I thought it had extremely low stakes. You had the three main characters, which I don't plan on talking about this too much, but you had the three main characters, Kaz, Niku, and Tam. Didn't like any of them. Whereas you had Yeager, Tora, those two were pretty good, didn't get enough screen time, and everything just felt all too kiddish. Oh, yeah, we're just going to, roam around and somehow get in trouble with the First Order, but everything's going to be okay. We're all going to survive it. There's not going to be really much tension at all. Like, if they can take some of these characters that we did have, I don't know, like, I don't know, even like Finn, Poe, maybe like Poe as a spice runner, some different stuff. Like, as long as the story is good, there's actually some action, there's some intensity, like there's some character development, and it's not just, oh yes, little kids running around, then I'll be all for it. But Resistance was just not my cup of tea. I'll say that. So.
Resistance, unfortunately, it falls in the category of being kind of there's only 2 seasons, and I don't think they planned on going farther than that, unfortunately. I think because Dave Filoni's involvement with everything else going on, I think they introduced that after the the canceling of the Clone Wars. Obviously, Dave Filoni didn't have a lot to do with that, but it is very kid friendly. I'll grant you that. People
Too
were,
much.
yeah. I mean, but again, you got to hook them in somehow. That's the gateway drug for these little kids, I think. But when you pull back a lot of the kids stuff, I mean, there were some pretty good stories. There were some pretty good elements in Resistance. I think season 2 was got a little more serious. I mean, there were stories where they found that empty planet that they were practicing, the drilling for Starkiller Base. There was all this other stuff that was very how the First Order was working, again, similar to the Empire. They were working with pirates and stuff like that. So it's something that the First Order was doing that also the Empire was doing back in the day. There's the storyline, again, it was never picked up, but Captain Doza, he had an Imperial uniform in his closet, and we never really got to see that story fleshed out. Obviously, the coaxium. So there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of stuff there that unfortunately didn't get picked up. But maybe there'll be a comic book. Brad,
Hey,
I'm sure you'll be on for that.
Well, yeah.
So they just didn't do as much as what I was wanting.
So there needs to be both, right? There needs to be the gateway, right? There needs to be the material for the kids, right? People dog on episode 1 all the time, but I tell you what, my youngest son absolutely loves when Jar Jar steps in the pile of crap in Mos Espa, and that's how you get them. The first hit's free. After that, you got to pay. But so you got that, and so I'm down for the kids' cartoons. I could not get attached to it at all. I tried to watch the whole thing. I couldn't do it. It just wasn't for me, and that's fine. But I'm sure there's a bunch of little kids out there that loved it. I think there's where it would be a good focus. We have a lot of comic books right now. I'd rather see something on TV, on Disney Plus or whatever. There's a good yes, I dog on Chuck Wendig all the time, but there's some Imperials or ex-Imperials that have pretty good storylines. There's that Brendel Hux storyline, which they make allusions to all the time. What happened with him and his son, but Ray Sloan. What happened to characters like that? Grand Admiral Sloan, she's an amazing character, and she kind of just fell off the radar. On the flip side of that, you have those characters like DJ. So you can talk about the whole rogues and scoundrels aspect. You don't have to necessarily go First Order Resistance the entire time. You can talk about the other side of the street with Star Wars.
Please don't ever bring him up again.
What's that?
Please don't ever bring him up again.
Yeah. DJ? I mean, he's good for memes though.
His name is the character.
Yeah. What? Don't join. Don't join, Rob. Don't join. Oh. And as long as Rose is the protagonist of this series, I'm going to watch. I was trying to time that with Rob's drinking to see if I could.
No, I just caught I got Tumed's comment in the chat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to make it every single time before I jump onto this. Okay. And anytime I'm not podcasting or anything, yeah, the bed stays unmade. Okay, that's tradition.
Why don't you just put up a green screen behind you, then you can make it whatever you want to.
Right.
It can be
like shaving.
Yeah, I can't afford that. Okay. I
just use your bed sheet as the green screen. And, Rose back again. Where are you disappearing?
Drink refill.
So I totally thought on this episode they were going to come out of. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm probably going to lose my shit when they come out of hyperdrive, and this is what I expected. And the Jedi Temple is in flames. I thought we were going to see that in this episode. You guys think we'll see that in the? They were. I assume they were heading to Coruscant with Maul. You guys think we'll see that on the last episode?
I want to hear what Pat thinks.
Oh, well, I think that we're gonna see slaughtered younglings, which is terrible. But I also think that they're gonna try and fill in some of the gaps that are missing from the film. Kind of like they are, it's kind of like they did this episode and in previous episodes, where you've got everything happening on screen so quickly in Revenge of the Sith. And obviously, Maul and Ahsoka are not in Revenge of the Sith. So they've got to close that out and kind of explore some of the behind the scenes things that are happening while everything that's happening in movie land is going on.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that they will kind of be redundant and rehash the battle on Mustafar and all that kind of stuff that happens in the film, because it happens in the film. But there's certainly a lot of supplemental material that will be covered, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think they're pulling out all the stops to give us some new images and give us some new perspectives on this story that we already know that's kind of wrapping up. And I think it might be a waste to kind of rehash that, as Pat was saying. But that Rob, that would be an amazing shot if this next episode you start with the ship just like flying straight at the orbit of Coruscant. And you see the Jedi Temple in flames. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. I have a hard time seeing that they're going to let them get all the way to Coruscant and have them basically put themselves within range of the Emperor. And the other thing that's interesting is that we know that in addition to Rex, you've got Gregor and Wolf that we see within Rebels who also have their chips removed. So, when I saw that, Rex basically had gotten his chip removed kind of en route, it would have been interesting, at that point, the other clones have no reason to expect that he's been turned, and he should have the ability to lure at least some of them in and get their chips removed as well. So I wonder if we're going to see any of that. And then the real question is, how is Ahsoka, Rex, and whoever else ends up with them going to get away from the rest of these clones that are still out for their blood?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great point, because you look at that ship, that ship contains Ahsoka, Maul, Rex, and a handful of clone troopers that could include Gregor and Wolf.
Right.
And they are not part of the Revenge of the Sith, and they could be completely diverted and then therefore are able to live on in their stories that we know as we know them right now. That's fantastic.
Holy crap, that question that we got, that's a hell of a question right there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's got to be one more dialogue between Ahsoka and Anakin based off their interaction on Rebels.
Wow.
Yeah, but she can't believe that Anakin is Vader in Rebels, and she would. I mean,
she didn't in Rebels, right? She was
right.
She still didn't make that connection
until she cut his mask and could see that slice of his face. And
there were hints before he cut before she had cut the mask.
Yeah, in season 2 premiere, Siege of Lothal, because she senses him. Yep. He's destroying a bunch of their squadron.
Let's throw in episode 42 of the third season there.
Minute 68.
I got nothing but respect for that. But, I was actually surprised that she heard the interaction between Anakin and Mace as he was basically stopping Mace from killing Palpatine. That gave her more insight than I had ever attributed with her having. And so I was a little bit surprised by that. And really, that seemed to be the impact to her more than, the rest of the Jedi dying. It was more that conflict between Anakin and Palpatine, and Anakin saying, "What did I do?" I just never saw her. I never thought of her as having that much knowledge of the events that happened. And I certainly don't see her as having any kind of intimate knowledge of the fact that Anakin's actually turned. Because in Rebels, she's like, I know Anakin. He was a good man. He was a force for the light, blah, blah, blah. So I would think that would kind of screw with a lot of what happened in Rebels.
Well, we're assuming that she put two and two together with all these voices, all these disjointed voices that she heard, all these elements that she's experiencing. Um, I don't think she I don't think she put that together yet. I think, she's still kind of, even through Rebels, I think she's still kind of trying to piece it together and trying to figure out Darth Vader as a character, besides Anakin, Darth Vader kind of, as we know in canon comic books, he the galaxy kind of just saw him like a peer. They don't know for the most part that Anakin became Darth Vader. It's just this guy that Palpatine is hanging around with, and he's the enforcer. So, that seems to be the consensus, even in the I forgot what novel, but I don't think at this point Ahsoka really understands the impact of what she heard. Um, or at least maybe she's through that last season of Rebels, maybe she's starting to put it together, and obviously when she comes face to face with Vader, obviously at that point it all comes together. But
Can I be the voice
it's
of dissent here?
go for it.
I'm kind of with the comment from Two Med Two there. Uh, I'm going. I'm about you guys. I'm about 96% denial on this one. Besides Obi-Wan, nobody knew Anakin better than Ahsoka. Ahsoka knew his tendencies, and she loved him dearly for who he was. But I think she completely understood those tendencies, and I think she understood fully what Anakin was capable of. And that he would do whatever he thought he had to save somebody that he thought needed saving. So I personally, I'm more in the denial. I don't. She heard that conversation. Um, I'm pretty sure. I mean, she's got to know about Anakin and Padme.
There's a huge
they-
difference though between doing
Yeah.
whatever it takes to save someone and protecting someone who slaughtered younglings.
True, not in George Lucas's Star Wars though. That's not a huge step for George, I don't think.
Oh, he kills
Because
kids
it
out of
happened.
the film, but I mean,
It'll be interesting to see if she feels that in the next episode, if the young
Right.
slaughter comes up as a piece that she feels through the Force, and that may have an effect on her opinion.
Look, all she has to do is watch Revenge of the Sith. Okay,
Am I
That's
right?
it. That's all she's got to do. No, but what I would have mentioned earlier, if I was able to get involved in this thing, was that I think, as Charles and I had spoken before this about the episode, because we love it so much. The reason I don't think she told Yoda about the turn, the perceived Anakin turn, is because she knew what the council would do to him. They would treat him as a threat and dispose of him, I believe. But she wants to believe that, one, it's not true, and then if he's headed that way, that she needs one last chance to kind of bring him back from that. And that's why she wanted to speak with him again, I'm sure. And because she still sees good in him, has hope for him, and that sort of thing.
Almost in the same way that Obi-Wan had the same hope of all until the way to the very last moment.
Right.
Well, Obi-Wan was the catalyst to the dark side, so whatever.
Y'all know that's right.
Now.
Just joking, a little side note. That's one of the comments that we got in our latest episode on the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast, where we discuss Qui-Gon Jinn. Please check it out during our hiatus over the weekend. Released last night. But yeah, getting back to just, can you guys believe how long it's been since we first met Ahsoka, and how how far she's gotten. One, as a character, and two, as a fan favorite. When she first showed up in the Clone Wars movie, she was didn't really like her. I was hoping that we would never have to see her again. But
ditto.
she has been. And again, kudos to Dave Filoni and George Lucas. I know it's a kind of a combo creation there, but she's really. I think at this point, if anybody out there in Twitter land doesn't like Ahsoka, they can go F off, man, because she is. She's a really fantastic character.
He's going to the ladder. He's going to the ladder.
No. I'm glad
he's going to take the high ground.
That's right. That's right. I'm heading right up there.
Yeah,
As Charles can attest, at Star Wars Celebration, I fought tooth and nail to get a hold of this.
Oh yes,
which is the promo poster, I guess, from the final season when it was, being, I guess, for the panel. And to have her front and center in their final season is pretty telling to how far the character has come.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And Trevor's got something too.
Oh yeah, I also have it, except I have it framed. So
nice.
Okay.
Nice one. I'm punched up.
I mean, the only thing better is signed by Ashley Eckstein, but hard to come by these.
Wait, what?
One-upmanship.
Don't make me bust out Star Killer's lightsaber.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go get my Sham Whitworth shined Star Killer.
Oh, look at that.
Oh,
Nice.
holograms.
All right. Okay.
Holograms win.
Yes,
Holograms
they do.
always win.
They always win. That's it.
I got that from Alex over at the Salty Nerd Podcast as a thank you for being a patron of his show.
Nice.
And yeah, I just don't have enough wall space anymore. I'm gonna, you know what? Ceiling.
I'll lend you my ladder. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that hologram next to the picture I have of myself.
Perfect.
Save your energy, Pat. You got like 3 hours of podcasting to do tomorrow.
Look, I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I'm COVID negative. It's cool.
But fun positive.
But fun positive.
Hey, is there a test for that?
I think so. Otherwise, my doctor or that guy on the street corner have a lot of explaining to do.
It was a very nice band, though. He was in.
Turn your head and cough.
Again? Okay.
This
Hey,
time,
if we're gonna,
this time I'll get my gloves.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I know my
Can
hands
you
were a
use
little
his
cold.
hands?
wow.
Oh boy.
Hey, if we're gonna give shout outs, I think on the matter of Ahsoka, Ashley Eckstein definitely deserves one because she took a brunt of that hate over the last 12 years. God, it's been 12 years. Holy crap. For Ahsoka, and she stuck through it and really turned that into a phenomenal character.
And she's so sweet.
Yeah.
Genuine person.
I've always said that she has been a great fan ambassador along with Ray Parks, but Ashley Eckstein, obviously the voice behind Ahsoka. Yeah, kudos to her.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so Ashley, we're talking about you with my friends. Yeah.
You should be looking at the ceiling,
we're
Ro.
talking about you.
He's got a picture of her on the wall. He talks to it all the time.
On the ceiling.
It's all right.
That's creepy.
Where the
Can you imagine
mirror-
Ahsoka saying "Make your bed"? It's kind of weird.
Super weird.
Trevor, you're down for that, and you know it.
Oh,
Come on, Sky Guy, make your bed.
Oh man. Well, guys, let's see one final look in the comments here, and
Well, I could ask a question as well,
Oh.
sure.
and that would be: do you think Maul and Ahsoka are going to have one more interaction in this final episode? or are they like kind of on separate areas, causing havoc with the clones? So
I'd like to say yes,
Yeah.
because I love them both, and anything between them is gold. So I hope so. I don't know that there's a whole lot of time left. So if they need to focus on other things, then so be it. But I love them.
I hope they do come back and at least give us a little tidbit of the beginning of the Ahsoka book, and maybe just kind of like tie that in together.
yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ro, because, well, yeah, if they mention her going to Thebeska, then that would be a fantastic tie-in, because that's actually not, because I don't want to spoil the Ahsoka book too much, but she goes to this very remote farming world, but she goes to Thebeska beforehand and becomes kind of like, well, becomes neighbors with the Fardis family, who, like probably the wealthiest people in there and stuff. But if they mention her saying, what, I'm going to travel to a different place, and then like throw around a couple different planet names, that Thebeska is one of them, that would be a very good tie-in. But I also know that her and Rex are also going to go their separate ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. So.
Do you guys think we're gonna see that? It's that's gonna crack us up, man.
Go ahead.
No, you go. You go.
I've talked more than you. Go ahead.
Do you,
It's
do you
true.
talk first, or do I talk first? Who
I
talks
have the
first?
apparatus.
My thought would be that they're going to have sort of a very empty, not empty, but maybe across the hallway sort of look back and forth, maybe an interaction voice wise or like a line wise, but it's going to be almost an understanding that they are now on their different paths and they're going to be split at this point. I think they will have an interaction, but it won't be a battle. It won't be a saber battle, nothing like that. It's going to be a very passive, almost like a tip of the hat, but not so much.
I know, Trevor. I'm thinking the same thing you're thinking. So.
No. I'm just thinking of, okay, well, then I know their next interaction is on Malachor on the Sith Temple with the Inquisitors, Kanan, Ezra, the whole shebang. It's great.
Well, I'm sorry. Was Charles talking Rex and Ahsoka or Maul and Ahsoka?
Rex doesn't use a lightsaber, though.
No, but I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to ruin anything from the Ahsoka book if they do a good, firm tie into it. So,
yes.
You said firm.
I did. Turgid.
And on that note, so let's go around the table and give each other a little shout out. Mr. Trevor Beast 454. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
All right, that there would be two places, or I guess 2.5. So
2.5. Wow.
Well, yeah. So on Twitter at TrevorBeast454, spelled exactly as you see there, with 2 E's, no O's. And then you can also check out sporkle.com, sporcle.com, sporkle.com/user/TrevorBeast454, where I have all my quizzes and stuff. And then like the other half thing would be my YouTube channel. I mean, I only have one video about my college game day sign, but that's completely unrelated. But I do plan on putting some more videos throughout the next months or so. And so if you want to be like my 5th or 6th subscriber to that channel, then that would be great. Okay.
Awesome. And Mr. Trevor Beast also, when he can, offers us some great content when we do our Sentry mode on the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. So a little round of applause for Mr. Trevor. Those questions are always fun. Sometimes they're really, really hard, Trevor, but they're very challenging and a lot of fun still. So hope you continue to help us out there. Padawan and Charles Owan from the Conversations podcast. How are you guys doing? Tell the folks how they find you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say that Rob is the meat in our friendship sandwich right now, so that's kind of cool. But you can find
it says that on his business cards, by the way.
It does. I've seen. You don't need a mask for that, Rob. It's fine. It's fine. We've all been tested. Well, I've been tested. I don't. Well,
I don't even know
anyway,
what you got tested for, but it's probably not important.
You might need
yeah,
other
don't worry
type of
about it.
PPE.
Don't worry about that. You do.
worry
You
about
do. You need plenty of PPE, but don't worry about it.
You can find us on Twitter at Swations. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/conversations. You can also listen to our podcast on all the fan popular podcast catchers, the Conversations podcast. And we're also on Instagram, aren't we, Pat?
We are.
Mm-hmm. And we also have a Spreadshirt shop, don't we?
We do. And I'll be on the high ground.
Yes, you. There you go.
Nice.
Seven
And
idiots.
Mr. Rob from the Jedi Temple Archives. What's going on over at the Jedi Temple Archives with that old lady that guards the archives? You doing something new?
Old Joe Casta, man. She she's awesome. She takes good care of the archives, make sure our knowledge is all stored and categorized. Obviously, as we mentioned, I just had you and Brad on for the kind of run up to this week's episode of Clone Wars. So definitely go check that out if you haven't. For anyone who's planning on rewatching it, it can give you some extra insight into some things. And then I've got appearance coming up with Pat and Charles on the Hyperion Adventures podcast for May the 4th. Some other exciting things coming up on May the 4th, so keep tuned to Scarif for that. And I'm going to be joining Pat and Charles for a new little segment on their podcast that I won't go into, but Tom and I are going to be joining them as well. So, but anyone who wants to find our podcast, we're on all the podcatchers. You can find us on social media at JTA Podcast, and then jtapodcast.com for any of our previous or upcoming episodes, and jtapodcast@gmail.com for email. So reach out to us. We love talking to people about all things Star Wars, and if you want to leave a message, we'll try to get you on the show.
Excellent. Brad and I had a really great time talking to you on the JTA and talking about Order 66 and other fun things that have to do with our favorite franchise from a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And Mr. Brad, I think he fell asleep. He forgot to take his Samanol?
Leave me alone.
Or might all.
All the above. No, it's a cocktail. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Jedi Mind Trick 79, Jedi Mind Trick 79. Follow at your own risk. Can't be held liable for anything I say on there. But I promised you some shameless self promotion. So this is where I fit in that shameless self promotion, Galaxy's Edge style. See, I threw it in there just for OM. I said Galaxy's Edge. So Ro and I are always looking for the next milestone. We've been working on this thing for about a year now. We're always looking for the next step up. We're about 1,700 followers right now on Twitter. So when we were looking at the next step, looked like the 2,000 follower mark. I made 2,001. I asked Ro when he thought I could make it there by. He said late June. I challenged him that I can make it there by May 19th. That's when episode 3 came out. I'm not sure when it came out in Egypt, but we'll have our fact checkers work on that. Anyway, in order to get that done, that's 300 followers. That's a lot. So I'm going to do another giveaway. We've done giveaways over the past year. I think they're really fun. This time we're going to do the giveaway a little bit differently. I posted some pictures on my Twitter account of my personal Star Wars sanctuary with a lot of my gear. Loot, as the youngsters call it. So I want to give some of that away. So what I need to do is follow me on Twitter. Look up the hashtag Scarif2001. That's Scarif2001. Look up that hashtag. You'll find that. It's also the pinned tweet on my account. There's a whole bunch of different ways to enter, and we're going to try to hit that mark by May 19th if we can. Some folks are already participating, which is really great. But the winner will be drawn around May 19th, and you'll get to pick whatever you want from those pictures that I posted from my sanctuary. So some of those are near and dear to my heart. Even the couple holocrons in there that came from Galaxy's Edge. So that was a good plug for Galaxy's Edge. So check that out, please. Again, look up the hashtag Scarif2001 and follow me, Jedi Mind Trick 79.
That is crazy. I would have like removed some of the good stuff before I took a picture and announced that I was going to give my stuff away because there's no freaking way, man.
Rose waiting for me to do a giveaway like that with the picture of the wall behind me.
Yeah. just send me that. I'll give you the postage. Just send me that lightsaber up top there.
Yeah.
And second place gets Trevor's bed sheets.
I never agreed to that, but okay.
Neither did the winner.
It's in the fine print, Trevor, for coming on the show. You should have read it.
All right.
Well,
All right.
guys, thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you guys in the chat and everybody that stuck around for 2 hours to listen to grown men talk about kids' cartoons. It's been a blast. Thank you guys. And just remember, we are everywhere you find your favorite podcasts, the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. We also have a phone number if you guys want to drop us a voicemail and let us know what's on your mind. 773-234-8659. Give us a call. We are waiting to receive your transmission. The antenna's up, everyone. Let's get going. And once again, thank you, everybody. And may the force be with you. Alex is not here, but Brad is. So I'm going to give him the last word. And let's take it away.
All right, folks, don't forget, it's always sunny on Scarif, and let's deploy the garrison.
And that's the scuttlebutt.
Awesome. That is correct.
Oh,